Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. I am Allie Ruckus. I'm going to kick us off for this first non-keynote session of FormFest 26. And we're super excited to be here. I hope you all were able to join us for our opening session. We've got Aska with us again here, so we're very fortunate. And we are going to jump right in because I know we've got a jam-packed day of sessions and information for everybody that we're going to be sharing. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the slides on the screen. We're going to start off with some brief introductions. I am, again, Allie Ruckus. I am the SDR manager here at FormAssembly, and I've been with the company for a little bit over a year now. So very excited to be with you all. My team lives and breathes Salesforce, so the information and the insights we're going to share with you all today are very near and dear to my heart, important in my day-to-day workflows. And I am calling in from just outside of the Washington, D.C. area. So any other DMV people out there, we're not too far from each other, but enjoying springtime as it comes with us and excited to share more. So Aska, I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie, and good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm Aska, the platform product manager here at FormAssembly, and I've been with FormAssembly long enough. There's still more to go, I think. I'm very excited to join you all here today and be able to talk about your your Salesforce data and how to keep your CRMs clean and your systems of records operating smoothly to inform your business processes. And as far as where I'm calling in, it's a little early still, but we're over here on the West Coast. I'm here in Seattle. And so really you're getting a coast-to-coast presentation from Allie and I today, I think. So without further ado, I think we can kick things off, right, Allie?
Awesome. Well, we are going to start off with a quick poll. So the title of our session is Salesforce, HubSpot, and more. And I am very curious with all of the people we have here, what tools are you using? So let us know what platforms you use primarily. Some people might use both. You might not use either of these, but let us know in the poll and just give us an idea of where we're coming from. I expect most of us are going to be Salesforce, but I'm very curious to see. We are at about 56% of people. That's a really great piece. We'll give it 10 more seconds, see if we can get any other insights here. Okay, I'm going to take it. We're at 75% participation. Amazing. That tells me people are paying attention and are here to see what we've got to say. So I appreciate you all. Yes, just like we expected, 98% of our people here are Salesforce. So what you see as we walk through our demonstration today should look very familiar, but we're going to start off with a little bit of background before we jump into that. So one of the things I really want to highlight here as somebody in sales is in Salesforce's most recent State of Sales for 2026, they highlighted this quote, and it's so important that I'm going to read it out loud. And the challenge for reps is not a lack of desire or skill, but capacity. They spend more than half of their time on non-selling work like data entry and prospecting. And with that in mind, we're going to do another poll because I am very curious with this data point from your sales perspectives. What percentage of your reps' time do you think is eaten up by manual data entry and fixing CRM errors? And I ask this for a reason, because manual data entry doesn't just refer to the initial entry of information. If you've worked in Salesforce for any number of years, you know it can include checking for duplicates, validating contact info, and if you do have some questionable data, taking time to then investigate those messes. And that's taking our salespeople out of the flow of their revenue generating activities. So it's a big boon to their productivity and can lead us to a lot of different rabbit holes that might take away from what we're actually able to accomplish. Okay, we'll give about 5 seconds left on this poll. We have 130 or so respondents. Amazing. And yeah, 10 to 25%. We've got about almost 40% in 25 to 50% of time. So we know the CRM is important, everybody. It has all of our data, but the more we can limit the time we have to spend in there on that information, the better. So with the rise of AI, it's more important than ever to make sure that we are keeping the clean information in our systems, because the AI and the agents that we're using are only as valuable or as accurate as the information that we're able to give them. So let's talk about duplicates. It's the whole theme of this session. And it's important because when a rep or whoever is working in your Salesforce jumps in and sees a duplicate or similar record, like I said earlier, it's going to take them out of that workflow where they are making calls, sending emails, doing prospect research, and they now have to shift into detective mode within your CRM. It takes them out of their workflow. It also can impact the ability and the experience that your customers are having with your organization. So if you have duplicate entries, like the example I have here on the screen, I might be getting multiple of the same marketing email. I could be getting reached out to by multiple salespeople at the same time, because it's difficult to tell, am I the right person? And it's really not, it's not enjoyable for your customers. But historically, organizations have treated these problems with back-end solutions. So rather than waiting or stopping the bad information or duplicate information at the source, we use back-end deduplication software or just block time at the end of the day to make sure everything's clean. And this is like bailing water out of a leaky boat instead of just going to find the hole and plugging it. So what we're going to show you today, or I should say what Aska is going to show you today, is how form assembly can help stop duplicates at the point of entry and ensure that data input is correct from the beginning, and start to see how that capacity issue will resolve itself with form assembly. So Aska, I will pass it over to you.
Thanks, Allie. And I feel you, and I've talked to so many customers that spend so much of their time just worrying about bad quality data in their systems of record, whether it's Salesforce, HubSpot, any other third-party database. Like, the amount of time it takes to try and track down these duplicate records or this trash that comes in is a whole role unto itself. And I think with a few key changes and implementing a point of collection, a data collection platform like form assembly can really help you to prevent that chaff from getting in with your good data and kind of really messing up your data store. So what we're going to walk through today is a few tips on how to, just at the very beginning, at the point of collection, where you can already start to gather good, clean data to put into your CRM to make sure that your business teams aren't spending hours in their day or in their week chasing down this bad data and trying to do data hygiene. So if you're new to form assembly, what we have here is the workflow list. Once you log in, this is what you're going to see. Notably, for those of you who are existing customers, if you're on the classic experience, it'll look a little bit different than what you're about to see here, but very similar. This is going to be based in the new Atlas experience. So we'll talk a little bit about the capabilities that you have there. But looking at this workflow list, what we can say is let's take a look at our upcoming strategy webinar registration. A lot like what we did today, and many of you went through to kind of get registered for this conference. But in this use case, what I want to walk through, and Ali is going to be my very helpful assistant. Let's say that we have this upcoming strategy webinar, and we want to make sure that we're collecting good quality registrants in addition to getting them registered for the conference, we also want to make sure that we're creating leads based off of this as well. And so that's what I'm going to focus on, is that point of collection and making sure that all of these registrants are correctly sorted into my Salesforce org to make sure that those leads are being created. Or if they're already an existing contact, I don't need to create an extra lead for them because they're already converted. I'm just going to make sure that I at least update their contact information if they're providing us new info. So I know when we collect leads, we don't always get the full picture. And so this is just another opportunity to really enrich the data in our system of record. So let's kick things off. The first place that we can already start creating clean data collection is with the form itself. So as I hop into the Seamless Builder here, what you can see is I get my workflow canvas. I get to see all of my steps here, and I want to check out that form. So here's my form at the very start of my workflow. Again, the workflow is the engine, the forms, the page redirects, the emails, all of that is part of a workflow. So as I open up this form, I get a new tab here, and I get to see what that form looks like. So already starting with my form, really simple changes that help us to collect clean data from the start. So when I present this form to my respondents and my registrants of the webinar, what they're going to see is a really nicely laid out form, great design, great theming. But already in here, I have a lot of little tweaks to validation that you may already be familiar with, but they're really helpful in making sure you get clean data. So ensuring that we have the minimum amount of submitted data, like required fields. This is very common, so you can just set required fields to make sure. A last name is really important in most cases, and an email address is almost as good as gold when it comes to making sure you're collecting leads and contact info. And for email addresses, we also want to make sure when we expect a certain type of input, we validate for the input. So you can see I have the expected input format set to an email address here for this email field. And that's because this form is your first layer of interacting and collecting data. So we want to make sure at the very start, we're collecting something that's really good. So we have our required fields, we have our field validation. Those are the first steps you can take to making sure that you're collecting the right data. Also, you can make use of form tips and hints and context to be able to explain to your registrants what we're collecting, why we're collecting it. Trust goes a long way with respondents to make sure that they're filling out their forms the right way. They understand how you want them to answer. So these are all really important things to do. Within the form builder, we can also preview the form, how it's going to look on a couple different devices. This all just helps you to build this process out really quickly. And I'm not going to demo it here. There's another session for this, but I did build this form using Faye. I just asked Faye, hey, I need a webinar registration form. Can you help me to get that going? We had a little bit of a chat. We spun out this great form. I just had to do a few tweaks with Faye as my co-pilot and being able to create this. And we're well on our way. That saved me minutes of time, at least 15 to 20 minutes. And Faye also took care of the theme for me as well. So it's really helpful in creating that content. So we have our form. We know that we're validating the data at the point of collection. It's coming in. We're already doing some pre-validation. What else can we do to make sure that we're collecting clean data? Well, spam is another big blocker to making sure that you have clean data. And with form assembly, you can just apply that using some of our options. Like we can enable Ultra, Google reCAPTCHA, etc. We also have access to Akismet as a post-submission validation for our team and above plans. So a lot of options to making sure that you're collecting that clean data. But once we collect those responses and we want to send that to Salesforce, we may not just want to send all of that data in one big bulk, just unformatted, uncontrolled. So what we want to do is we want to use the power of our Salesforce connector to create logic that effectively routes and decides what data needs to go where. So in this case, I'm going to open up my Salesforce connector and we're going to take a look at this. So I've added a Salesforce connector. I'm going to move over to the configuration. And what we're going to see here, I'm going to collapse all my steps right now so we can do the overview. So let's collapse all of these steps. So let's walk through what we want to do. So again, that form has been submitted. The respondent sees their confirmation message, and then this Salesforce connector kicks off. So what are we going to do? So with the data that was submitted in that registration form, we're going to see if the registrant already exists as a contact in our org, because if they do, then we don't need to create a new lead for them. Why don't we just go ahead and then update that contact after we do that? However, if they aren't a contact, they don't exist, we don't find that contact, then why don't we already see if they're an existing lead? That's a really good check for us to have. So we'll look for an existing lead. And if they are not an existing lead, then we'll go ahead and just create a new lead as a last sort of out for ourselves, just to make sure that we do capture that as a brand new lead for ourselves. So let's start back up at the top. Let's look at the existing content. So I'm going to open up this step. So my parameters for the step. So we're going to take the action of looking up a record, and that record type is going to be a contact record. And I should mention at this point that this isn't exclusive to the Salesforce connector. Any other CRM connector like HubSpot or the webhook connector, you're going to see a very similar interface, and you have access to the same powerful set of tools to be able to manipulate that data and transform it into data that really is useful for you. Moving on, the lookup query is going to be really important for ourselves, because this is where we say, hey, Salesforce, can you tell me if you can match for this person or this registrant based on some type of query? And so in this case, I'm going to say, let's look up for that email address. So I know for my use case, I'm going to have a lot of registrants that are going to use one email address, their business account email address. And so I know that that's a primary key for myself and my Salesforce org matching contacts up. So in this case, I have an email from that contact record. And if it equals an email address that was entered on my form, then I'm going to consider that a good match. I'm also going to say I have some controls. So like in the case that an email doesn't match a record in Salesforce, what's going to happen? Well, I'm just going to continue with those other actions that I showed, the looking up a lead and then creating a new lead. So it'll just move on in the connector logic. In the mapping here, because this is just a lookup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save myself time later on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, if I do find a contact that already exists, let's go ahead and create a variable in the workflow. This variable is just going to help me be able to say, like, I know exactly what contact ID I need to manipulate as I move forward. So I'm going to store that as a variable for easy access in the rest of the connector. So I'm here, what I'm doing is I'm taking that contact ID from Salesforce, and I'm just loading it into a contact ID variable here in form assembly. And this is really powerful in larger and more complex use cases, because those contact IDs or these variables can be used throughout an entire workflow. So if you have a workflow that's 20, 40 steps long, like you have a really big workflow, you can use those variables to create really complex and really tailored solutions to make sure that everything matches up. And yeah, you're not just relying on query after query. You only need to make that one query, store that one piece of information, and you don't have to make another call against your API if you don't need to. So assuming that maybe I have found a contact and I've loaded that contact ID in, let's move on to saying, yes, let's update this contact. So let me open up the conditions here. So here I have a precondition for this step to say, I want to make sure that I'm not trying to update a contact when I don't even have a contact ID. So what I've set here is I set the precondition of saying, does my contact ID variable, is it blank? So if it's not blank, then yes, let's continue forward. So if this contact ID is not blank, then let's proceed. I can also use dependencies to help order the how my actions run. So in this case, I'm saying, yeah, let's make sure that we run this step after looking up for an existing contact. That's one of the actions. I also want to run this step acyclically and say, look up this, try to execute this after we've also checked to see if there's already an existing lead as well. So again, you can create really complex workflows here within this connector alone to really tailor that logic to exactly what you needed to do to make sure that you're automating exactly what you need and getting this data to Salesforce. So again, we're moving down to parameters. Our action here is we want to update a record this time. It's going to be that contact record. And luckily, this lookup query, I don't have to query for that email address again or any other data because I already made the query previously. So instead, I'm just going to say, let's use that exact contact ID, the exact person that I found, and let's update that record. And when it comes to sending data to Salesforce, I get to pick and choose exactly what data. So in the mapping section, what I can do is I can say, hey, let's map these fields. Luckily, in a lot of cases, your fields on your form are going to match what your field definitions are in your CRM. But if they don't, that's not a problem at all. The mapping section makes it really easy for you to make those connections and map things together. What's also really helpful is when you say have a form field that has multiple choices, and maybe those choices, the options within that menu don't match up, you can also choose what you want to map those to. So in this case, I can say, hey, if their primary interest is one of these things, but the value in Salesforce is different, I'm allowed to also tailor those mappings to match. Luckily for me, I already know that these primary interests and going into this contact description field aren't going to be a problem or a conflict at all. So I don't need to worry about mapping those right now. So this is great. I can make sure that I'm just updating a contact for an existing contact that I already found. I'm going to make sure that I can map all the fields together. And that's all I need to do to update that contact. So let me go ahead and collapse these fields, and we'll move on to quickly touch on a few things. So this is very similar as I talked about. We're looking up an existing lead, then we're going to create a lead. But let's focus on creating a lead, because this is creating a new record that we haven't found. So in this case, I'm using the opposite logic for my precondition. If the lead ID from this existing lead is blank, then I do want to make sure that I create a lead because I didn't identify a lead previously. In this case, what I might say is if one of my fields on my form, which was dietary interest, if I didn't have that, I want to make sure that I do capture that as part of the lead. So if there's dietary restrictions, or in fact, I have a better one, my primary interest. This is a question on my form, and there is an interest field on my lead, the product interest field. I'm going to map those. And that's exactly what I want to see. Now, that was a lot to walk through, and I want to make sure that this use case is going to work. So what I can do is I can use test mode to quickly and easily check whether or not what I just configured is going to work. So I get a preview of my form. I can quickly fill out the data here. I'm going to put in some test data just to make sure that I can submit this. And in the background, what I've done is I've sent Allie a copy of this workflow as well. And so she's going to fill this out for me because I already have a converted contact in my Salesforce org for Allie, but she used some different info. And we're going to see if when Allie submits that new response that I'm actually doing exactly what I said, in that if they're an existing contact, I'm updating that existing contact. So we'll see that in a second here. But now that my test run has completed, I get a completion record, and I can review to see what my logs are. I can see that all of these steps executed exactly as I expected. I can also jump over to my response to go and view that response. That test response is going to show up in my response records as a test response. I can just verify that everything completed properly. Now, Allie, have you had a chance to complete submitting that response?
Yep. It is submitting as I speak.
Okay. So I hope it's making it in there. I can see my test response is still in progress, so it might be a little bit of processing. But if I look at one of the previous responses from Allie, I can review that records. Let's see. This is what Allie had previously submitted to me. If you remember from our use case, we were using that email address as the primary match. So we're going to check to see if, Allie, if you use the same email address, we want to see, and I believe what we need to do is we need to update your last name, because I think when you first submitted, we got your maiden name, but I think we're hoping to see your new name here in Salesforce. So let me double back, see if that response is in. I think this is your response right here. Let's double check. I'm going to verify here in form assembly, and looks like, yes, that is going to be your new name. So we're doing this all live. Let's see if this works. I'm here. This is your contact. You can see we have that last name. If I just refresh my record, let's see. Yes, it looks like that new name made it in. Perfectly. That's exactly what we expected. This is your same contact. We didn't create a new lead. All we did was we updated your existing contact, and we don't need to worry about extra leads floating around for contacts that already exist. Super helpful. Well, I think that's about it. Thank you all for tuning in. Let's see, Allie, I think, are there some questions that have come through?
We have lots of questions that have come through. For the sake of time, I will pick a few that seem to be the most relevant to just in general. And then if you have other questions, please feel free to join some of our other sessions. And if you have questions about specific functionalities, you can always reach out to our teams, our support and our sales team, and we can make sure you have all of the functionalities that you need. So let's see, I saved a couple of these questions. Oscar, I am going to give this one to you. So data quality is very important, and you shared that we can verify and verify emails. Are we also able to verify phone number?
Absolutely. That lookup query is totally flexible. If you're already familiar with how you create queries in Salesforce reporting, you're going to get a very similar query SOQL style language and builder in form assembly as well.
Awesome. Great. We'll do two more because I want to leave time for everybody to get water or whatever before the next session. Our next one is, what about case sensitivity when looking up what a user enters versus what's already in Salesforce? Are there any considerations around that?
I think that's something I'll have to get back to you with. I don't think we're wholly case sensitive. I know that there are some matching characters that you can apply, and so we support those the same as Salesforce query language supports certain matching characters in their language. We'll support the same ones as well.
Awesome. And I have one last question. I don't think we're going to be able to get an exact answer to this one because I think it's a little bit more complicated, but just so that everybody hears it, the question is, can I do the lookup, then pre-populate the form with data that they've given last time?
Yes, that's actually a fantastic use case. I don't know if we have another session. I should have paid attention, but pre-filling from Salesforce and other CRMs is a possibility. The new Salesforce connectors that we have for workflow are bi-directional, which is a huge win. So that means you can both pre-fill and submit data to your systems of record with these new connectors, and you get the same capabilities for that tailored query language and that powerful lookup capabilities to be able to identify records and then pre-fill and map exactly what you need where you need to in the workflow. That's actually a fantastic question, so thank you for asking.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we have 3 minutes until 11:30 here on the East Coast. I want to give everybody time to get whatever you need before our next session. But before you go, I'm going to launch one last poll for us. I've seen several questions in the chat about upgrading or questions around different functionalities and which packages they're available on. So if you're new to form assembly or see things that you don't currently have access to and want to speak to our sales team, let us know on the poll before you head out. And otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate it all. And I'll give a few seconds for the poll. Be sure to check out the resources on your screen. The Salesforce State of Sales document is linked there, as well as some additional information around some of the functionalities that Oscar shared with us today. So thank you so much. We'll see you at the next session, and I hope you all have a great Wednesday.